I know what I'm about to display for y'all is not the conventional type of content that y'all would traditionally see from my channel. But I said, you know what, let me go ahead and talk about it since this is like a big story right now. It's a major story that's just floating around the news cycle, and it is a pretty big deal when you think about it in hindsight, especially since when this first happened back in 2007, 2008, around that range. I didn't really focus on it because when that was going on, I was in college. So, I was in my freshman year of college when the first writer strike happened in around, I think it was late December. Well, not late December, late 2007, early 2008. So I wasn't really caring about that. All I was caring about was just being a freshman in college, getting my stuff done and stuff like that. I wasn't, caring about it. So I can look at this now with a more mature lens. So in case y'all haven't heard, and I'm sure some of you may or may not, some of you may or may not care, it is what it is. But there is now another writer's strike. This is, as far as I know, the second one within the, I guess you could say, within the 21st century. I'm not sure if there were any that happened in the 20th century, but there probably has been in the history of Hollywood. But this is the second one in the 21st century. And basically it all boils down to the writers feeling like they're not getting compensated the way that they feel that they should. But I think this one might be a little bit more impactful this time around, mainly due to streaming. Now, I've heard a bunch of different things and everything like that, but that word streaming kept coming back up. Streaming, Netflix, really kicked off the whole streaming game as far as streaming television shows and movies and whatnot. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, all these other streaming platforms kicked up. It's like so many of them, to the point where I can see why some people don't even go to the movies like that anymore, because it's so many out there. It's so many to try to keep up with. And now the writers are having an issue, and it's really going back to streaming, and because they feel like they're not getting paid enough money. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll through this Deadline article, and I feel like this is the perfect article to go through. As a matter of fact, there's actually 3 articles I'm going to go through. So this video might have some length to it. So just sit back, relax, and see and listen to whatever it is you're going to hear and see when it comes to this strike. So it says, WGA strike explained the issues, the stakes, movies and TV shows affected, and how long the 2023 work stoppage might last. It says Hollywood has been a union town for close to 100 years. In that time, there have been a little over a dozen major labor strikes, the last being the 2007-2008 Writers Guild of America's work stoppage, which lasted 14 weeks and it had a profound effect on the industry. 14 weeks. As a matter of fact, I had to look it up. That strike lasted 100 days. 100 days. You're talking about a little over 3 months that thing lasted. And that's a long time in that industry, especially since there's constant movement of scripts being shopped to different studios and production companies to get approved and greenlit to work for shows and movies, whether it's something made for television or something made for the big screen. The WGA strike started at 12:01 a.m. Pacific time Tuesday, a minute after its contract with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers expired. The Guild confirmed that the strike indeed would happen about 3 hours prior to the midnight deadline. And it says below is a primer covering the issues, the parties involved, and what's at stake for the entire industry during the work stoppage. So it says in brief, the deadline was 11:59 p.m. May 1st, which of course was yesterday because I'm recording this on May 2nd. The issue, compensation for writers and a changing media landscape, and that goes back to the streaming I was talking about. Because remember, when that one happened back in 07 and 08, there was no issue with streaming. Streaming wasn't even really a thing at the time. Everything was still television and movies. It was just those two outlets. But now you throw streaming in there. Streaming has basically become its own media giant outside of television, like network television and cable television, and of course movies. Because now it's like you're combining both of those into one package. The jobs at stake: 822,000 direct employees, 2.4 million total supported in 2021. Industry wages: 81 billion direct, 186 billion total supported. The market: 261 billion in sales. WGA membership: 20,000. AMPTP membership: 350 plus TV and film production companies. And this is two sides. On one side are the Hollywood studios, networks, streamers, and hundreds of other motion picture and TV producers which make and or distribute most content. They are represented in the talks by the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. On the other side of is the Writers Guild of America, which represents writers in Hollywood who are members, which most working scribes are. Supporting the WGA are many of the other powerful guilds and unions, including the SAG-AFTRA and directors of the SAG-AFTRA and the Directors Guild of America, or the DGA. What's at issue? The survival of writing as a profession is at stake in this negotiation. The WGA said at the outset, noting that many members who previously made a good living are finding it much harder to do these days. Driven in large part by the shift to streaming, writers are finding their work devalued in every part of the business. While company profits have remained high and spending on content has grown, writers are falling behind. The WGA said in a statement, the companies have used the transition to streaming to cut writer pay and separate writing from production, worsening working conditions for series writers at all levels. In its strike declaration on Monday night, the Guild was more explicit, asserting that the AMPTP is essentially out to create gig economy work out of once were full-time careers. Yeah, because I was trying to figure out, like, looking at some of those salaries, and they don't get paid much. And if you live in LA, where, Hollywood is, you're going to need more to support yourself. It's a lot of money that they're not making, which would explain why when you see movies that have these lackluster scripts, that's probably because it's not because they don't want to, it's because they're writing whatever they think can get approved just so they can get paid. Because I had read somewhere that when it comes to the writers, they don't get paid until the script gets picked up. So they can write script after script after script, but they're not getting paid for just writing a script. They have to get it picked up by a studio or a production company, and then they'll get paid. The company's behavior has created a gig economy inside a union workforce, and their immovable stance in this negotiation has betrayed a commitment to further devaluing the profession of writing. From their refusal to guarantee any level of weekly employment in episodic television, to the creation of a day rate in comedy variety, to their stonewalling on free work for screenwriters and on AI for all writers. They have closed the door on their labor force and opened the door to writing as an entirely freelance profession. No such deal could ever be contemplated by this membership. Basically, what it's saying to me is that they just open up the doors to any and everybody to write something, no matter how bad it is. You know how some people go to school for a particular craft, but now they just let anybody go ahead and do anything if it looks like they're making it look good? That's what it sounds. Basically, it sounds like they're bastardizing their profession. There is also the potentially transformative impact of AI, which is another talking point I kept hearing, and how it could be used to generate scripts. The AMPTP, for its part, is taking a conservative financial approach, representing the interests of its member with an eye to their bottom lines and stock prices. AMPTP President Carol Lombardini is widely seen as a tough but fair negotiator. She wants the best for her side, and that's a deal that sees production continue to flow and flourish and help studios and streamers keep their costs under control. What's at stake? Hollywood is just emerging from the impacts of COVID and the related production slowdowns. More recently, studios, networks, streamers, and producers have laid off thousands of workers. For an industry that a year ago was collectively questioning its own future, a strike-related work stoppage after layoffs and COVID-related shutdowns could prove a staggering three-punch combination. What do writers want? Specifically, with the current strike, the WGA seeks gains in compensation and residuals and curbs on many rooms where groups of writers work in advance of the production of a television series to break stories and write scripts. The Guild has argued that the producers are well able to compensate writers more fairly. Get much more detail here, and I'm gonna just leave that right there. It says the entertainment segments of the industry's major companies, Netflix, Paramount Global, Warner Brothers Discovery, Fox, Disney, and Comcast/NBC Universal, posted an average $29 billion in annual operating income between 2017 and 2021, it said in a recent report. Legacy media companies' profits in 2022 were lower, but the companies expect improvement in the near term as they build towards increased profitability in streaming. Note, the AMPTP also represents Apple and Amazon in addition to the companies listed above. The Guild also wants to establish some sort of policy on AI and authorship, especially if a writer's ideas are used as the basis for AI generated work. So as you can see, that AI keeps coming up a lot, goes back to automation. So you see that they're trying to get it to the point where now computers and machines are generating these scripts. They're trying to go away from humans because that means they have to pay them less. See, a lot of people thought it was only going to be like your regular standard blue collar job, which was effective. Remember a few months ago, I did a video about the fully automated McDonald's down in Texas, where it's fully automated. Like it's ran by a machine. I said, give it some time, that domino gonna fall and it's gonna spill over into other industries. And based on what I'm reading right now, when they're talking about AI, I think it's found another industry to go into. And this is a very big industry right here. What do studios and networks and streamers want? Quite simply, they want to make sure that they can keep making a profit. One line of argument from producers says that streaming is still an emerging business and studios and networks don't exactly know what profit margins will look like or even how they will be achieved. But Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos recently estimated his company expected content spend for 2024 at $17 billion and reported Q1 free cash flow that zoomed to $2.1 billion compared with $800 million in the year ago quarter. That's a pretty healthy emerging business. Officially, the AMPTP has been more vague about its goals beyond the desire to see production continue. One recent statement from the group read, "We are all partners in charting the future of our business together and fully committed to reaching a mutually beneficial deal with each of our bargaining partners. The goal is to keep production active so that all of us can continue working and continue to deliver the consumers the best entertainment product available in the world." What shows will be affected? Late night shows were the first hit. Deadline confirmed that The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon are set to go dark on Tuesday, given their nightly schedules and topical nature. During the 2007-2008 strike, all the late night talkers began airing reruns on day one. Next to be impacted will likely be daytime TV, especially soap operas, which generally have an ongoing production schedule. Saturday Night Live will be affected soon thereafter with respect to its last 3 shows of the season. This would impact the Pete Davidson hosted show on May 6th, as well as the season finale, where traditionally cast members who are leaving get to say their big goodbye. At some point, even hit episodic shows could be impacted. Per a recent WGA report, a work stoppage in May could delay the network's television season, which continues to account for 1/3 of all episodes produced, including 45% of the episodes produced by legacy media companies Disney, Paramount Global, and Comcast NBC Universal. Writers on fall network series typically begin work in May and June in preparation for series premieres in September and October. Writing for numerous streaming series is also ongoing or is anticipated to begin in the coming months. Any delay in the start of work has the potential to postpone fall season premieres and could ultimately reduce the amount of new programming produced for the 2023-2024 network season. So basically, if the script isn't already written for a particular show, you SOL. Now, if you already have something already written up for, say, an upcoming season, then you'll pretty much be good for what you have written right now. However, if there's anything that needs to be written after that, it ain't happening. And if you don't have anything right now, like say for shows that are on hiatus and they haven't started writing a script yet, then they have to sit out. And what that's going to end up doing, like the article suggested, it's going to push back schedule. Anything that was already in line that was coming up, maybe say within the next year, because a lot of the stuff that's out right now or set to come out the remainder of this year is already pretty much good. They already are locked in because whatever they filmed, especially if it's a big film, is already locked in for a release date. But 2024, on the other hand, is on shaky ground. When that blow fell in the 2007-2008 strike, networks leaned into a then relatively nascent genre of programming, unscripted. What resulted was an explosion of reality TV in new formats, many of which are still with us today. Well, that answers a big question on why I keep seeing all these so-called reality shows. So that's what caused it. That strike back in 07 and 08 is why there was such an influx of so-called reality shows, because those were easier to make. It could have an even larger impact this time, further accelerating the decline of scripted programming on linear television. The broadcast business has been at a crossroads for the past couple of years, putting emphasis on live programming, sports, and unscripted fare, as scripted series increasingly are consumed digitally on demand. The WGA strike could well hasten the process, according to a number of industry sources. Fox finished as fall's #1 broadcast network among adults 18 to 49 for the first time in a decade, bolstered by The Masked Singer, Thursday Night Football, the World Series, and WWE SmackDown. With more than 40% of Fox's schedule devoted to sports reality program, we may be taking a glimpse at what the typical programming mix on the Big Four could look like in the near future. The impact on movies. In a worst case scenario, the theatrical release window would see several date changes for picks, some as soon as Q4 of this year. While the 2024 theatrical release calendar remains roughly intact in its first 6 months with completed movies coming down the pipeline, beyond that gets squishy. It's in this scenario that studios might need to pull from Q4 2023 into 2024. A delay in production could potentially cause another post-production logjam, which was one of the knock-on effects of postponements during the pandemic. That left the late August to October 2022 box office and winter this year a dry bed for product. In fact, we're still waiting on movies delayed by the pandemic to hit theaters. Warner Brothers DC's The Flash, which got its first screening at CinemaCon on Tuesday night, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom set for December 20th, which were two such titles. Studio and distribution marketing chiefs remain in wait-and-see mode regarding blockbusters, but smaller movies that are publicity dependent are primed to pivot should SAG-AFTRA strike. One upcoming feature production that is safeguarding itself from a lengthy WGA strike is James Gunn's Superman Legacy, which is planning an early 2024 start for a July 11, 2025 theatrical release. Gunn showed off a cover of the screenplay on social media and announced the start of pre-production earlier this week, with costume, production design, and more now up and running. What went wrong with the talks? Many of the biggest issues were in TV, such as getting more writers on set and what the studios are referring to as mandatory staffing, and the WGA is calling preserving the writer's room. The AMPTP rejected this, with studio sources saying this was difficult because it could last for months, particularly at the streamers, where they often don't greenlight a show until all of the scripts are written. Also, a point of contention were shows written entirely by one person, like The White Lotus. How would staffing quotas work on those? Elsewhere on residuals, the Guild was asking for 6%. Was it 6%, -5%, -5%? I don't know how I'm reading this. I don't know how that's written. Increases over the course of a new 3-year contract for all minimums, including residual basis. But according to the Guild, the AMPTP only offered 4 to 2%. I'm guessing that, I don't know. If someone knows how to read that, because I don't know how that's supposed to be read, someone let me know down in the chat or in the comments. One-time increase to most residual bases. How long could it last? The longest WGA strike on record was 1998, lasting 153 days, followed by the 1960 strike at 146 days, and then the 2007-2008 strike lasting 100 days. There seems to be even more support for a strike this time around. Back in 2017, the last time a strike authorization was taken, it was approved by 96.3% of the 6,310 writers who casted ballots, with a record of 67.5% turnout of eligible WGA members. In 2007, the authorization vote was approved by 90% of the voters. The strike authorization this time around was approved by nearly 98% of the eligible voting members. And this is not just WGA. A number of unions have contracts with the AMPTP expiring in the next few weeks. Generally, the guild that negotiates first sets the tone for the subsequent negotiations. The DGA has gone first at the bargaining table in each of the past 3 bargaining cycles. The last time the WGA went first, back in 2007, resulted in a 100-day writers' strike. The powerful DGA begins negotiations for its 19,000 members on May 10th. Its contract expires on June 30th. And can you imagine? If they went on strike and the writers went on strike, they might as well just shut Hollywood down at that point. SAG-AFTRA began negotiations with the AMPTP on June 7th. Its contract with the AMPTP expires on June 30th. Should SAG-AFTRA strike, it will prevent actors from doing publicity on their feature or TV projects, which would have a very powerful knock-on effects. In addition, unions and guilds have come out publicly in support of the WGA, including SAG-AFTRA, the Directors Guild, IATSE, Hollywood's Teamsters Local 399, and the American Federation of Musicians and the UK Writers Guild. These multi-billion-dollar corporations, including Amazon, Netflix, Disney, and Apple, invest in highly paid executives and lavish productions. Teamsters Local 399 brass said in a statement, "They can afford to share the wealth with the writers who create the content we all watch. We are monitoring negotiations closely. This is a shared fight, and Teamsters do not cross picket lines." SAG-AFTRA was more circumspect, sending the following notice to its members. If you are contracted to work on a project that continues production while the WGA is on strike, you are legally obligated to continue working by your personal services agreement and the no strike clause in our collective bargaining agreements. Actors can also continue to audition for work if they choose to. The Actors Union also advised its members that if you as an individual decide not to report to work as required, you may be subject to breach of contract claims or be subject to termination by the producer. IATSE and the Teamsters also have no strike clauses in their contracts, but their leaders have told members that their contacts afford the legal right to honor the WGA's picket lines if it comes to that. Economic impact. I told y'all there was a lot to this. As a matter of fact, I don't even think I might have to read the other articles because it's all right here, honestly. Concerns about labor unrest and uncertainty surrounding pending corporate restructuring have contributed to 35.8% plunge in on-location TV production in Los Angeles in the first quarter of 2023 compared with the same period last year. According to the Motion Picture Association, whose members include Netflix, Paramount, Sony Pictures Entertainment, Universal, Disney, and Warner Brothers, 2.4 million people work in jobs supported by the industry, which pays over $186 billion in wages annually, and it's not just in LA. The entertainment industry pays out $21 billion per year to more than 260,000 businesses in cities and small towns across the country, per the MPA. It accounts for $14.4 billion in exports and $7 billion in trade surplus for the U.S. So for people who wanted to know how this could impact the everyday person, there you go. Because a lot of people probably was like up until this point, oh, I don't care, and this, that, and the third. Well, there it is right there. I don't know if that impacts you personally, but there's a lot of people that it does affect. What happened the last time? The big win for the Writers Guild in 2007 was some jurisdiction win over new media, which was precedent setting. Streamers would have to hire WGA writers on shows over certain budgets. Other than that, writers received a new percentage payment on the distributor's gross for digital distribution, but it came at a cost. The AMPTP estimated that WGA writers and IATSE union members lost $342.8 million in wages in the 2007-2008 work stoppage. The New York Times reported that the overall hit to the Los Angeles economy was $2.1 billion, including an $830 million bite out of statewide retail sales as entertainment workers trimmed spending. The big four networks are CBS, ABC, NBC, and Fox suffered too. NBC had the most severe ad shortfall, with its primetime ratings declining sharply. None of its new shows achieved breakout success. Moreover, during 2007, NBC saw its primetime 18 to 49-year-old viewership drop by 11%. CBS dropped the same demographic by 10%, and ABC lost 5%, according to Crane's New York Business. A white paper released by Nielsen's Media Research indicated that TV viewers spent more time with alternative forms of entertainment outside of broadcast television, a trend that may accelerate this time around given the massively increased prevalence of social media, chat, and short video consumption since then, which is true because, Instagram, I think Instagram was just getting out there at that time. And it was only relegated to BlackBerry. Who remembers the BlackBerry? I think that was more. It was more of an exclusive app to BlackBerry before it went over to Android. And of course, BlackBerry phased out, and iPhone was really taking over. And then iPhone got it, and now here we are today. Because this was before Twitter was a thing. Because I don't think Twitter started until after this was done. And because I know that I didn't really mess with Twitter like that until like 2009. So really the only social media apps you really had at that time was Facebook, MySpace. MySpace was kind of on its way out too. But yeah, Facebook, MySpace, Twitter was about to get started, and Instagram had just started, if my memory serves me correctly. And then you got to think in 2007, that's when the first smartphones got dropped, which was the first iPhone and the first Android. So it was a new landscape. But you also had the BlackBerry and you had the Sidekick as well, which really technically weren't smartphones. One SNL source told Deadline that during the 2007-2008 strike, there was a real question whether the venerable NBC show would ever come back. It was especially heartbreaking because the show was in a really great place then. But at the same time, it was absolutely right. There's no way to do SNL during a writer's strike. And that's the entire article right there. So yeah, I just wanted to read that. I wanted to run that down. This is I guess you can say this is like a toss away type of video, because this is something I wanted to add in, because since it was a big story that's going on right now. And then there are some people who watch my channel who, let's be real here, y'all watch television shows. Y'all watch movies just like the rest of us. And it is what it is. But so I wanted y'all to get an idea of what's going on. Because again, when the first writer strike, well, not the first one, but when the one that happened in 07 and 08, of course, the one I will remember, I wasn't paying attention to it like that. And I'm glad that now I'm paying a little bit more attention to it now. And I'm glad Deadline really broke this down in its simplest forms for the person who's not in that industry to really understand what is happening or what's about to happen. And the thing is, when it comes to these strikes, you never know how long they're going to last. It's not like they're saying, oh, we're going to go on strike from this day to this day. No, they just say for certain we're going on strike. And that's all there is to it. And when the strike ends, no matter how short or long it may be, is when it will end. We're not going to tell you when it's going to end. You just meet our negotiations. And the thing is, they're going to most likely meet it. It's just a matter of how long they plan to hold out. But then again, like they said, this one's different from the ones in the past. This one is different from 07 and 08. This one is different from the other years that was mentioned in this article, because this one has streaming platforms attached to it. And it's a lot of streaming platforms. It's so many. So this could last a little bit longer. This is only day one. So the longest one, they said, lasted 154 days. You're talking about 3 months. Just about over 3 months, honestly. So it's going to be looking real spooky right now. But Y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments. Like, I just want to, like, I want to know what the feedback is when it comes to this situation. Is it something that you care about? Listen, I'll understand. Many of y'all are going to say, oh, I don't really care about this or whatever. But then, you know, some of y'all actually do care and, you know, are glad that this information was being brought to you. Again, this is not something I would traditionally put up on my channel because it's kind of left field for what I usually talk about. But as someone who goes, and of course she knows I do movie reviews on my channels and stuff like that, whenever there's a movie that comes out that I have interest in, this, you know, of course would affect just those videos. But thankfully my channel is not geared around that. Now, for those who do have movie and show centered channels, this could affect them because now it's tapping into your niche.